This is an example of how to approach a prompt for AP English Lit question number 2, the prose analysis question. What a lot of students do is they don't read the prompt very carefully, and if you don't answer the entire prompt, you automatically get a score of 4 out of 9 on the essay, which is not a passing score. So I'm going to try and have you looked at how to dissect a prompt to make sure that you answer all the parts. In this excerpt from the autobiography of an ex-colored man by James Weldon Johnson, the narrator has started living independently as a black man for the first time in Jacksonville, Florida. Read the passage below and write an essay discussing how techniques like diction, figurative language, syntax, and other resources of language reflect the narrator's attitude toward the social situation of African Americans. First of all, a lot of times prompts give you information that's interesting but not necessarily very helpful. So when you look at this beginning part in this excerpt, that does give you some background information, but it is not at all helpful for really answering what the prompt is asking. So keep it in your head, I guess, but that is not what the prompt wants you to do. Okay, read the passage below, duh. So let's just cross that off and write an essay. Okay, so now we're left with the core of the question. Discuss how techniques like diction, figurative language, syntax, and other resources of language reflect the narrator's attitude toward the social situation of African Americans. Now, what a lot of students would like to do here is to read the passage and talk about techniques. And that's perhaps possibly because it comes first, but that is the wrong approach. What you need to do is look at this and find out what is the central question that this prompt is asking. So if you look at it, it lists different techniques, and you can see 4 of them. Diction, figurative language, syntax, and other resources of language. And the like here suggests that you don't have to talk about the ones listed. You can talk about other techniques if you'd like. How those resources reflect the narrator's attitude toward the social situation of African Americans. So the number one thing you need to do here, folks, is notice that the prompt asks you about the narrator's attitude toward the social situation of African Americans. This, students, is the central core of the prompt and what they want you to answer. Now, a lot of students would tend to say, well, through the techniques of diction, figurative language, and syntax, the narrator's attitude is shown. But that isn't right here, because the prompt is asking you, and this is what separates the smart students from the students who are going to get a lower score, is that the prompt is really asking you to identify an attitude of the narrator. So the narrator in this passage of X-Man can be approached in a number of different ways. Probably is, I think, a good word, and it's in the text here, is that he, the narrator, laments. The narrator laments, okay? He has a sad attitude about the social situation of African Americans. So that then would be your thesis. The narrator has a lamenting attitude, or sad attitude, or disappointed attitude toward the social situation of African Americans who are discriminated against, which is shown through diction, figurative language, syntax, and other resources of language. So missing this key part here, if you don't identify the narrator's attitude, tell what that attitude is, name it, you're down in 4 land, people, and that's where you don't want to be. Here's our third and final example of a question 2 prompt. Read the following passage carefully. Then write an essay showing how the author dramatizes the young heroine's adventure. Consider such literary elements as diction, imagery, narrative pace, and point of view. So what you need to do for this prompt is show how the author dramatizes the young heroine's adventure. So you need to identify what is that adventure. What is that adventure? How is her adventure shown? And you would use then the literary elements, whichever ones you choose. And it says such as up here. So that means that you don't have to use those, but it's probably a good idea. So how is her adventure shown? So make sure when you're answering this question that you do not say, the author shows the young heroine's adventure through diction, imagery, narrative pace, and point of view. For that response, you will get a 4. You need to explain what that adventure is and how it is shown. Dramatizes just means shown through the young heroine's adventure. So consider such literary elements, pick the ones that fit best, but make sure you identify that adventure and what techniques the author uses to show it.